Your Excellency, you're beginning to look beyond the pandemic now in Botswana, but how are things with COVID-19 now?
Well, we've had, I think, a period that was pretty bad, and it's looking much better right now.
Right.
The incidence rate has gone down, the mortality rate is declining, and the prevalence is also plateauing, if not declining. We had a lockdown that was pretty strict a number of times, and we did something quite unusual for a democratic free country. Given our statutes, including our basic law, in our view, we arrived at the opinion that was not shared by everybody, including the opposition, that we ought to invoke the provisions of the Constitution and therefore institute a state of public emergency. And we had that renewed because it can last a maximum of 6 months at a time, 3 times. So we had a total period of 18 months of a state of emergency in order to use it for peaceful purposes, to effectively, and without harm to the economy, any more harm to the economy, to restrict the movement of persons.
In the UK now, we're beginning our programme of booster jabs. This is a third vaccine for most people. Whereas in sub-Saharan Africa and many other parts of the world, many people haven't even had their first jab. How do you feel about that?
No, I think that I want to applaud the UK government for doing what the science informs them is the best thing to do. But I also want to be critical of the inability, including others, developed countries where vaccines are produced, the inability to sufficiently share. Because arithmetically, even if you count it, given the production rates right now, there is enough to be more shared without compromising the need for third wave vaccines in the first world. So I think there's a little more sensitivity called for and inclusiveness called for. And so on that score, we feel pretty bad that not enough is being shared. And you know, we are prepared to pay for these, but we think that the responsible thing as a global citizen to do. You know, if you have vaccines required by the science in order to protect an individual, irrespective of age, that is the moral right thing to do for any government. So if I were in the UK as a citizen or in government and the scientists advise that we vaccinate children, I would do it. I applaud them for doing that. The difference I'm making is that if you counted the number of vaccines being produced, the output, there's enough to vaccinate the children, the adults, even third round in the UK and other places, and share with the other countries that do not have an opportunity to have a first jab.
So Botswana has done quite well in the Global Prosperity Index that's been published by the Legatum Institute this week. And they've done particularly well going up the rankings in terms of personal freedoms, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. What have you been doing to prioritise those areas?
It's something we cherish and it's part of our DNA. We're a multi-party democracy, the oldest in Africa, I might add, since independence. But even predating independence, we were a people of a free spirit. There is an adage in our customary assembly systems that loosely translated means that everyone is free to say as they please. And the words or views around an assembly are all acceptable. And so it is not surprising that we are perceived to be free and we have a free and vibrant press. The only thing we'd like is to find out what it is that we're not doing sufficiently well for us to be right up there.
Well, I think I can help you on where Botswana may have not scored so highly in the global index. One thing that I picked out was on environment. Apparently, Botswana went a little bit down in those rankings. Could you explain perhaps why you think that might be?
I cannot attribute any one thing except perhaps human intrusion as populations grow. But we will take a harder look at it to find out what are the determinants of that scoring.
Unfortunately, the UK has actually slipped down the global rankings. As you look at the UK now, and you'll be aware that we've had quite a lot of soul-searching post the decision to leave the EU, how do you feel about Britain's place in the world? Do you think that the UK will become a more or less important country?
The United Kingdom is made up of people who are resilient and dynamic. And if you look at the history of the world, they've had much to contribute to civilization. I have no doubt that the United Kingdom should bounce back and project leadership in many spheres. We do look to it for its learning institutions, research, the track record of what is achieved. And it's a question, I think, of doing more soul searching and just getting on with it.
Botswana is a member of the Commonwealth. Now, quite a lot of Commonwealth countries are now saying that they are interested in leaving the Commonwealth. They feel that it's a tie to a colonial past. Do you see Botswana ever going down that route?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I just think we ought to club together and make our organization more relevant and responsive to our needs.
And it seems that you weren't at COP26. Were you tempted to attend the climate change conference in Glasgow?
Unfortunately, as is provided for in our system, when the annual year of Parliament begins, it starts with an address to the nation by the head of state. It's commonly known as a State of the Nation address, and I have to deliver that. So it coincided with the preparations for that and the delivery of that. So the reason I didn't go was simply because of that, yeah.
And what did you think of the outcome of COP26? Do you feel that it achieved much, and what did it mean for your country?
Well, the fact that people agreed to congregate and meet and reflect is in itself a success. What they reflected on and what they realized may not be as successful as they may have wished. But clearly, in terms of their actions, particularly those countries that contribute the most to emissions, it could be predictable before the conference that it was not going to achieve what it intended in that score.
I would just like to ask you, if we were to have this interview again in a year's time, what would you hope to have achieved?
Well, I'd have hoped that Botswana will have ramped up in its rankings in the Prosperity Index. And I wish Britain, too, all the goodwill for it to have to do better than it has done this time. And I hope that there'll be much more learning between ourselves and the Legatum Institute as we share. But the rest I'll leave for what I have to say tonight.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you.